Today we are going to learn about the note card system. Today our goals are going to be to define note-taking vocabulary of paraphrase, source, plagiarism, and cite. We also need to understand the procedures of the note card system. And finally, our job is to apply the note card system in practice. So starters, we're going to talk about some key vocabulary. Our first word is source. And what this means in a speech or research context is it's where you find your information. It could be websites, books, magazines, interviews, articles, videos. All of these are sources of information. So for example, Cole used 3 sources while researching his speech. Our next word is paraphrase. You may have heard this before, maybe on a worksheet where a teacher asks you to paraphrase something in your own words. And so what it means is a rewording of something written or spoken by someone else. I like to think of it as almost the opposite of a direct quotation. You know that a direct quotation is someone else's ideas, a line from a book or article written word for word. Well, a paraphrase is someone else's ideas written in your own words. You use these to add your own style or clarity in a speech or essay. So for example, Sam paraphrased the president's speech into his own simpler words. Another example is you might take a direct quotation, so here, 407 years ago, a quote by Abraham Lincoln, and you might paraphrase it into simpler terms. 87 years. Our next word is cite. It sounds similar to cite, like to view, but it's spelt differently. Here, it means to give credit in your speech and in a works cited page to the people who came up with your information or ideas first. This is really important because not giving credit or having citations is a form of plagiarism or cheating. Kira made sure to cite all 3 of her sources in her speech. Our next word is plagiarism. This means taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as one's own. This could be accidental or could be on purpose. Not having citations is a form of plagiarism, or also known as cheating. And like I said, it can be accidental. Sometimes people plagiarize by copying things off the internet on purpose, but sometimes people take information and forget to tell us where they got it from. When you do that, that's accidental plagiarism. And an example is, Leah cited her sources to make sure she was not accidentally paraphrasing. Now, we're going to talk about the note card system today. And you might be wondering, well, what is the note card system? The note card system is a method to keep track of sources in order to better cite them to prevent accidental plagiarism. Simply put, it's a way to take notes and organize them in a way that makes it easier to do your research, to write speeches, and to make sure you're not plagiarizing. So your first job is to make sure you keep track of all sorts of information about your sources. This will all be used to cite your sources or tell us where you got your information from. This helps people use the source for their own self or to be able to know who came up with what ideas in your speech. So the first thing you want to do is when you find a source of information, like a website or a book or an article, is to write down a few pieces of information. When you use a web source, you need to make sure to find as many of the following things. You need to write down the web address, also known as the URL. If the website has a title, like Encarta.com or nationalgeographic.com, the title of the website needs to be written down. You also want to write down the date you visited the site. If there's an article you're reading, so for example, if you are reading about cigarette smoking on the National Geographic website, your article would be about cigarette smoking. If there's an author listed, list the article. And if there's a specific publisher, so for example, howstuffworks.com is published by the Discovery Channel. If you're using a print source, like a magazine or a book, you would make sure to write down the title of the book or magazine, the author. If there's an article, write the article title, the publisher, the date of publication, and if you can find it, the place of publication. If at any time you can't find one of these things, move on. Write what you can and find and move on. So now, how exactly does the note card system work? I know I need to keep track of things, but how do I do it? Well, the note card system has you keep track of your research and sources on note cards. You're going to find that these note cards might be physical note cards or they might be digital. For each source that you use, like a book or a website, you may need the following note cards. A source card, which we will explain later, paraphrase cards, or quotation cards. So, for every source you need to write down information on a source card that tells us information about the website, article, or book. And then you're also going to use note cards to find out information from each source. So for example, you'd have your source card that keeps track of all of the information about the source, and then you're going to use other cards to keep track of facts from those specific sources. This is a system that helps you keep track of all the sources and all the information. It makes outlining and writing much easier. Now, we are going to use a research notes template that is digital and found on Google Slides. However, if you prefer to do this on hard copy note cards or on a note packet, which I will provide later, all of these things can be found on the Google Classroom. So you can download a note card template on Google Classroom, or you can write them on traditional note cards. This is an example of a source card. So for every book, magazine, article, website that you need to use and create a source card. Now this source card is used to keep track of all of those good details that we wrote down or we talked about keeping track a little bit earlier. Here is that we need to make sure for every source and source card we give it a number. So this was the first source that I used on a paper about cigarette smoking. Since it's the first source that I looked at, on my card I made sure to number it source 1. Then, before I even started researching, I decided to write down all the information I needed so that I can use it later to cite my sources. I made sure to keep track of any info about the source that I could, because this is going to help me cite my sources and make a works cited page. Now that I wrote down my source information, I can go on to make notes about things that might help me in my speech writing. This is an example of a quotation card. Basically, it tells me what my topic is so I can remember, and my topic is the cons of smoking. I also make sure to write down the number source it came from so I know that it came from my source number 1. I made sure to write down a direct quotation from my article that helped prove my topic. Notice I put things in quotation marks to show that they're direct quotations. This makes sure that I know to cite my source that this is a quotation. I even make sure to put the website address so I can go back and find it later. Again, making sure that I put the source number on the top of the source it came from. Once again, I'm making sure that I'm putting direct quotations to show that this is a quotation. This is an example of a paraphrase card. Here I took information from an article and I wrote it down in my own words. Notice I also made sure to put my topic and which source it came from. Now, this may seem a little confusing, but we're going to practice it right now. So what you're going to do is you are going to skim the article Employee Abuse of Cell Phones. You are going to pretend that you are going to write a speech on the following topic: the cons of using cell phones in the workplace. What this means is you need to find what are some of the negative things that happen when you use cell phones in the workplace. You are going to take notes using the note card system to help back up this topic. You are going to make sure that you make one of the each based on the article. You're going to write down everything you can about this source and create a source card. Then you're going to find two pieces of information that can help back up this topic. You're going to write one in a paraphrase, that means in your own words, and one in a direct quotation. So now, hopefully, you will get some practice on using the note card system.